Welcome to Beers with Contractors. We're cracking a cold one and taking a deep dive into the foundations of your business, pun intended, to unearth the strategies, techniques, and insider knowledge that can take your contracting business to the next level. So, grab your favorite beer, pull up a seat, and let's have a chat about the nuts and bolts of the construction industry.
Contractors, ready for another week. You just finished one, Dillon, and you don't have a refill.
Yeah, I'm getting close. So give me all of 15 seconds. And after I finish this open of welcome everybody, I'll drink this and go grab another.
Yeah, I have to fill up dead air as you walk across the room, get a beer. And do you have your opener? No, there we go. Okay.
All right, we're ready. Actually start.
You just need to know that Dillon can barely function as an adult without me. Actually, it's the complete opposite. Yeah. So, how are we doing this week?
We're doing great. Doing great, yeah.
Are you getting the summer vibes?
I'm getting the summer vibes. I've had them for 3 months, so we're ready to get there. And I think the family's just tired of being pent up a little bit. Yeah, need to go outside. Need to go to a park, walk around a little bit.
As your family ages, because your youngest is how old? Not even 6 months?
Yeah, about 6 months coming up.
Yeah, so it's funny. How does the baby describe that they're pent up and need to go outside? Yeah, there's other things that are pent up in a baby that I'm sure you have to worry about.
It doesn't stay pent up very long, though, and then you clean it up.
I'm so glad I'm not in that age of my family now, because most of them now, that's like pent up is a sense of freedom. Like, we just don't want to be in the house with the parents anymore. Let's get the hell out of here. And we're like, yes, please go. So then we're the ones that are like, yep, just get us on the back patio, cold brewskis, nice weather.
Got to grab a beer, and yeah, it's almost warm weather beer time, so.
What'd you have on your mind?
Yeah, something we were talking about is the idea of managing yourself. And it's kind of a funny phrase because obviously there's a lot of managers that are listening to this podcast. And what does it mean to manage oneself? And you had thought up something that we had done at a conference.
The skydiving thing?
Oh, well, you had mentioned the skydiving, but we went on this trip together and we did this kind of team building activity. How would you describe it?
Well, the person actually, if you want to reference one of our other episodes, Jonathan Nielsen actually facilitated that. It was called the Johari Window. And it's essentially a nice way of saying, if you have, well, back to managing yourself, you're only as good as how self-aware you are of your weaknesses, strengths, otherwise. So as a room, we go around and we all write down and mention one thing that we really respect or admire about another individual on the leadership team. And we all go around the room. It's all nice. And then we tell them one thing that they may have done to cause their job to be more difficult or get off target.
And then it gets interesting.
Oh, it's always the first one's like little light punches. But boy, after, and it actually pays to do this with a few hands of liquid courage in you. So we did this years ago. You were a part of this, where we all went around the room and everybody's like, well, we love how you do this. We love how you do that. And then it finally got around to Tyler Wallace. You know, Tyler works for Hilti now, said, you are the most ADHD person I know. And I have been this close to crunching up Adderall and putting it in your coffee all morning. And I was like, really? And all the other people were like, yeah, that's totally true. And I was totally unaware about managing myself. So it's a great exercise to kind of break down what do we call it? The corner 2 areas, as Jonathan mentioned, where you're not really giving truths. It's kind of pseudo connection. That's corner 3. And it gets people it breaks down the walls of humility. And then at the end of it, you have to come out with a commitment to the team, really based around your weakness. And it also shows a bit of vulnerability, I think. I mean, was that your observation of that exercise?
Yeah, 100%. And when I think of managing oneself, something that always comes to mind, I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Jordan Peterson, who's influenced a lot of like young men, especially. He always says, don't go criticizing someone else's yard until you've mowed your own. Don't go making trouble with someone else's stuff until you've made your own bed. I think that's what comes to play is like, it's really easy to cast the stone at someone else and not pay attention to what's going on in your own world. And the Johari Window was super interesting because basically you have some things that you know to yourself that other people don't know. And those would be like, secrets or hidden areas, right? And that's okay. Like we can have private lives. Don't have to share everything at work. That's normal. But then there's some things that our coworkers know about us that are unknown to us. And those are the blind spots. And so this exercise was it was helpful to put it all out there in a respectful way, because it wasn't like we were throwing down disses at one another or something like, I can't believe you do this. It was respectful, and it was accompanied with something also positive. And then you could leave with something to work on.
Well, and it's also something that can come back up. And thank you for saying blind sides, because I couldn't remember what the term was. I was obviously carrying on a behavior with my leadership team that I was unaware of. I was just going around my daily life, just so happy. I'm Will Blake, yay. And then all of a sudden I was realizing, no, what did they coin it now? It's called Will's walking around with matches. So meaning they're working on a project, but then I come in and give them different things that I just dreamt up that morning. And then it was like, no, that call it entrepreneurial ADHD, which actually ended up being real ADHD, was creating a whole other set of issues. But it's just, then as you go through the next quarter, trying to fulfill this commitment, creating this new habit, people can call you on it, being like, hey, whoa. And we talked about Blackburn Basement Repair that we worked with recently on one of our softwares. They've got an awesome office located out of Spearfish, South Dakota. The commitment for the GM there, Rick, was, listen, I know I'm an old guy and I'm not good at technology. So my commitment is I'm going to actually try to adopt the technology side. So they have weekly been committing him to this, like kicking and screaming, but it's not argumentative because it was all agreed upon out of this exercise, which I would highly recommend for any young team, because I think you recognize the only reason teams don't succeed is because they don't lack the, call it wherewithal, the thick skin, the emotional awareness with one another to actually get shit done.
Yeah, and I think one of the coolest things about this, when we implemented it for the first time, we wrote down, here's our one commitment from the blind spot that was revealed to us. And then 90 days go by, and at the end of that quarterly, we had to say, hey, I committed to this. And so like mine, for the first time I did it, was like, I won't let other people get in the way of something that I'm trying to accomplish, because other people would just kind of push their ideas around and it would slow me down. So that was my commitment. And then I had to reread it after 90 days, and we went around the room and had to grade ourselves. Has it gotten better? Was it the same, better, or worse?
Funny, I forgot about it.
Yeah. Has it got the same, better, or worse? And then everyone else had to go like, yeah, that was the same, or that's better. If it was the same or worse, you had to say why. And so again, it was revealing another blind spot.
Yeah. So I forgot about that part. The follow through is you got to come back and reflect on it. And there's been a few times where things have gotten worse, and it's just kind of like, well, hey, if we're part of the long-term, part of this business, and we got to trudge to our long-term targets, it's like, cool, dust yourself off. We got another 3 months. Let's get it right. And I just think we've got several, clients that have young leadership teams. They're bringing in, field supervisors, their first salespeople. And that's really becoming the leadership of the organization, even though they have 8, 9 employees. Like I stress to them highly, like, this is an exercise, because we've seen it where, the leader is probably a very high visionary type, and they're just wreaking havoc on the business. And it's because nobody's afraid to, in just a brief example, is like, everybody's too afraid to tell them, get the hell out of the way, please, so we can just do our job. We believe in this company. Will you please just step over here and do these things? And a lot of times what happens is you suppress that feedback. Egos get in the way, and then they get bruised, and then, oh boy, that's a whole other mess, because then you get, what are they called? In runs?
It's like the meeting after the meeting?
Yes, the meeting after the meeting, where it's like, we made a decision about this. We're all good, right? And then everybody's like, yeah, but then 15 minutes after that, everybody goes and has their little meeting after the meeting about how they don't believe in it, right? And that's the kind of kiss of death for a lot of young leadership teams. But also, I think you've seen where a lot of leadership teams, they excel is because they've got, what's it called? Psychological security? Is that what it's called? Yeah. They know that they can be themselves and vulnerable in front of those individuals. And obviously construction companies are the most vulnerable groups of people.
Yeah. Leading the packs
by far. By far. We are the most open-minded
and very humble people as well.
Hence our podcast. Like, yeah, we're so humble that we have beers.
Hey, we are humble at the end. Just stay tuned for the end. There's always something good at the end.
Wait, I know I kind of threw this guest on you last minute, but we have had tons of people asking through, our software company, but also through our contracting groups about health insurance benefits, life insurance benefits. How do we use this as a tool? This is super huge. Our guest today is the co-owner and founder of Radiant Benefits. They've got a cool little backstory they put in their pre-show bio, but I'm going to let Hunter tell the story. They specialize in health and life insurance products for small businesses. Hunter is also a recipient of an Outstanding Achievement in Entrepreneurship Award, Top 10 Most Influential Young Professionals Award. By the way, that's 1 or 2 times I think that's happened, but also got numerous awards through carriers. So our guest today, co-owner and founder of Radiant Benefits, Hunter Nixon. Hunter, cheers to you, buddy.
Cheers to you guys. Thank you so much for having me today.
By the way, I got to say this. Like, I saw Hunter the other day at this event. And by the way, it was a young professionals event. So I walk in the room and I automatically do not feel young. And Hunter and I know each other.
About to age out.
Yeah. And I'm like, Hunter, how old are you? 33? And he goes, actually, I turned 30. So we look at his accomplishments and I'm like, man, I'm a late bloomer.
Not even close. Not even.
We're talking to someone from another decade. Welcome, Hunter.
Hey, cheers to you. So yeah, tell us about, first off, because I know our 3 listeners want to know about, like, hey, I want to implement benefits in my company. We've already talked about this kind of mental disposition contractors have, but tell us about the history of Radiant Benefits, and then we'll get into some of the nit and gritty of benefits.
Okay, so history of Radiant Benefits. Really how we started was, oh man, what a journey. So on the corporate side for many years, my wife and I, she's, the one that outshines everyone because that's just who she is. And so we worked our way up, and a lot of times we really, for the first 2 years we worked for the same company, we didn't know who each other were, but we just saw our names on leaderboards. So we were really like competition, and it would piss me off when she beat me. And I'd be like, like it really rubbed me the wrong way. But then come to find out it rubs her the wrong way as well. Like, who the hell is this guy? And why last minute did he pop up, above me? So going through this, work our way on there and go up in management. It's going well. And then obviously the world stops, right? COVID happens. The entire world shuts down. And during that time, I feel like it really gave us a fantastic time to reflect on where we're at on our own lives, what we wanted with our lives, where we wanted to be. Is this where we want to stay? Is this something we're going to stick with for the rest of our lives? Or is this something that's a stepping stone to get us onto something better? And through that process, I actually ended up leaving our past company, went to go start another brokerage in the property and casualty world. Fantastic opportunity. I will say, wasn't quite the opportunity I was looking for. I felt like I was really just getting back into the same stage that I was already in, maybe a fancier office with my name on the door. And that's not really what I was looking for. I was looking for a little bit more ownership in what I had, and a little bit more impact for what I could do for people, what not just underneath someone's thumb. And my wife was looking for the same thing, right? And so she calls me one day. She ends up leaving. Kind of a crazy story on that side. Don't know that I can get into that right now, but so she ends up leaving. She calls me, a little bit hectic. I'm like, look, I said, she's upset about the whole move. And I said, look, I think we have an opportunity here. I think find a name for a company. I said, and go get contracted. We already know what to do. We are good at what we do. We already have the foundation set. Now let's just build the house, right? So she really stepped in on that huge part, launched it, got it going, started that in August. She calls me about a week and a half in, 2 weeks, and it's like, look, like, come join me on this. And I was like, okay, maybe. So had a couple hiccups at my previous opportunity, on the PNC side. And I was like, man, things weren't flowing the way I wanted it to. So I left on good terms, luckily, and ended up joining her. And that first 6 months was the most terrifying time in our lives. I'll tell you that much. Trying to figure out, like, okay, how do we pay our bills? We have a 1.5-year-old son at home, and are we going to make it? Do we keep our cars? Do we keep our house? Are we going to live in our cars? And just kind of going through the motions of, okay, we know what has made us successful in the past, and we know what's going to make us successful in the future. And now we need to build. And I feel like it was about the 6-month mark is whenever we really kicked it into gear and kind of took it from beginning stages to, okay, this is now sustainable to how do we grow? And yeah, it was a very interesting time for the world, but even just for our own world, right? That we were living in, our own little bubble. And it was, I reminisce on those times sometimes, and I miss that feeling almost of just like that urgency and that kind of fear, I suppose, of starting something new.
Well, but you got kicked out of the nest. When he first told me this story, this was a while ago. Actually, we were at an awards event. I think you were telling me this story. And I was picturing like Jerry Maguire when he's like walking out and he's like, all right, I'm starting my own thing. Who's coming with me? And then like nobody did anything. And then I think Renee Zellweger stood up. So it's kind of like in their world, it was the opposite a little bit. Like the wife, Hunter's wife's like, all right, I'm starting this new thing. Who's coming with me? But then after you peel back the layers, you find out actually she's an amazing closer because she knew there'd be some point where he'd be miserable with his job.
She did. I hated every minute. That's not who I am. That's not who we are.
So super pumped. You've been able to help a lot of construction companies. So I knowing kind of what you're into, I would love for you to peel back the stigma that us contractors have about employee benefits. Because to our listeners, Dillon, you know this from your research in HR, like especially Gen Zs and most employees with rising cost of living, they want to see, benefits as a part of their income, right? I mean, you know some of the statistics, I think.
Yeah, I don't know the statistics, but I can say from personal experience recruiting, I mean, that was just a very common question. And I had many candidates that would just ask me on the phone before we even moved forward with an interview. They were like, well, if you don't offer benefits or they're not benefits to my liking, then we can just stop this now. I was like kind of amazed how forward people were. So it is something that people are looking for.
Yeah, and I think we found like in our world, even I was guilty of being like, this is going to be astronomically expensive for, us to even provide benefits. And we found out we could have done it years before. And then the wake of all the people that had probably left us because we didn't have benefits anyway. So let's just kind of open the room up to that. Like if you're talking to a contractor that's considering benefits, what are the key things they need to go ahead and untangle in their brain?
Oh man, I feel like one is the cost. I literally just had this, but with that being said, I can see why it might feel that way. And part of it is I just came from a meeting right before this, and I'm sitting down with this company. We've gone through all of their benefits package, their invoicing, everything else, built out our own proposal, right? And I'm looking at it, and keep in mind, this is like a 9-person group, right? There's 9 employees that participate on this, and we saved them over $30,000 a year. So I understand why people think there's a huge cost to it. Well, one, because you may not have someone in your organization providing you the right information. And that's my biggest hurdle. I feel like a lot of times, or at least I would say my second biggest hurdle is they're so worried about the cost. Or I come up with someone and they say, and it might be another 10-person group. And I say, well, what do you think cost is going to look like to you? My most recent answer is, I don't know, probably 10 grand a month. I'm like, 10 grand a month? I said, man, I would be a millionaire. It's just having those conversations of, okay, what is realistic? What is your workforce look like, right? What's the age of it? Because obviously the younger, kind of like you guys said, the millennial, the zillennial, and that Gen Z aspect is so huge coming into this workforce and all of them. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. They're all looking for benefits. And if you do not provide it, the guy down the road that just took over the company or bought a company or started a company that is a millennial or a zillennial will take them. And sometimes it's just walking them through that process of, okay, look, it is not exactly what you think it is. Okay. I'm not here to sell you on anything. I'm here to educate you. And if you like it, then you like it. And if you don't, you don't.
Well, I think that's myth number one that we need to solve, because I fell into this. I spoke to somebody just the other day, has 18 employees, and they're like, well, we're not big enough yet. And I did the same thing. I think we had 35 employees. I'm like, well, I don't think we're big enough yet to actually get the savings. And then you talk about somebody has 9 employees. So, is there a smallest size to this, Hunter? I mean, most of it's as much as you want, right?
I mean, realistically, we can go as small as a 2-man group. It's not, you don't have to be 100 employees, because I've had the same rebuttal, right? Where someone might say, well, I'm not quite ready yet. We're only at 80 employees. And I'm like, that's a pretty large company. I don't know how you're keeping employees, but you must pay them very, very well, because I don't know how else they're moving along with this, right? So, and I've also had on the backside of, you have the small mom and pop shop that is the 5-person group, very concerned about the price. And it's, look, like we will customize it. Like our entire goal at Radiant Benefits, right, is something that I love about my wife, is whenever she came up with the name Radiant Benefits, was she wanted to be radiant, right? And because it was such a dark time, was more of how do we be a light for people? How do we be a solution for people? How do we be that lighthouse for people to come to, that they can have the right guidance? Because that's not always the right case in our industry. And we understand that, right? That's just the way it is. And that's in any industry. But that's really, really where we want to be, of like, look, like we will customize this to your liking, and then we'll evolve it. So as you grow, so will your benefits package to what you need to be looking at, right? What are your competitors doing? Now you're at 15 employees. Well, it might look a little bit different. Now you're at 25. It's definitely going to look different. Now you're at 50. Well, that 50 mark is a huge point in time for businesses, right? And then after that, at 75 mark, I feel like is really when you get into like a different corporate level and right, of how they actually operate. So, and how they recruit, and how their HR works, and how their payroll works, and how their other benefits from a 401k, and how they attract and their marketing, right? So scalable, and being scalable is something that we take very seriously for us to do for our clients. Because if we are not scalable with our clients, then we are not a solution for them.
Walk us through, I know there's no perfect mold, so just kind of briefly walk us through, like, 15-person company on up. Like what are the most common offerings that companies would offer at 15 or 20, and then they may add these ancillary or other offerings as they grow. Could you just kind of walk through that progression? Or is it just completely different per company?
Not always. So what we see on I'm going to go like 10 to 15. So 10 to 15 person groups, those are pretty standard whenever we go in and look at them and we do a review. So you're going to have your major medical, right, which is going to be, I don't know if I can put this on, like Blue Cross Blue Shield, right? Especially here in Oklahoma. Everyone knows it. They use it. It's accepted virtually everywhere, right? Then you're going to have your dental and your vision. And there's a specific 2 companies that everyone goes with. That's just the way it works. And that's what we see. That's like so standard. But keep in mind, inside of every company, like those carriers, let's call them books, right? So you might have 4 different sections, and underneath each section, there might be 70, or let's say 30 to 50 different policies that you can pick from. So you might have section 1 and section 2 that might look exactly identical, besides price. Price is very different. And that's what happened with this current client, right? When that 30,000 savings is, well, they're over here where the price is much, much higher, which is obviously on purpose, right? When their broker knew they could have been on this other piece, right? There is no reason for them paying that more. But then it also boils down to, okay, we get into the dental and the vision, and you might have a life insurance in there, right? But they're directing it exactly from the carriers themselves. So us as a company, we wholesale a lot of that. On the wholesaling process, it's very different. So you have a company that might buy 500,000 policies from this dental company, and then and it might cost that dental company, they might sell it at $50 a month. It might cost them $10 a month. We buy it, this company we use might buy it at $15 a month and go sell it for 30, right? But it's the same thing.
Right.
So we can sell it for 30 per se, and you're on the market typically buying it over here. And that's where we really differentiate ourselves, is how do we bring in more resources on that.
First off, thanks for elaborating on that, because, it may be what we should do is just have like a top 10 of all the confusing things, and just be clear, like insurance is still even confusing to me. But I think one of the benefits that we had, God, keyword benefits here, we're going to say it a lot today, is I found that I would have way better rates the earlier I got into it, because then I have all this years and years of data. And we are an organization that's above 75 employees. So now it's like, now we're really seeing the benefits of saying, hey, the largest pool of your employees are Gen Z, and their costs are based on review are lower. So our costs went down even more, not only for us, but the employee. But, so when you have a company, I think that's another big question that a lot of contractors don't know how to answer, or they don't know, which prevents them from even reaching out to someone like you, is do I have to have 100% buy-in from all my employees? So what does that look like, Hunter?
None at all. That's going to be dependent on the carrier that you use.
Yeah.
So each carrier has different provisions, anywhere from 75% participation to 25%. So, and that also determines who we're going to go with, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we customize it? How do we build it? And then, but something we really see is like on the major medical side, you can only move so much because it's so federally regulated.
Mm-hmm.
There's not much you can get around.
Yeah.
Now, your ancillary and supplemental products, we can kind of maneuver in that space and say, hey, we like this pricing over here. And then we're going to send it to another carrier. We're going to say, hey, this is what we're up against. This is what you're up against. Are you willing to go any lower?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're having them compete, because at the end of the day, I'm not there for the carrier. I'm there for my client.
Yep.
It's not.
Yeah, the carrier's not paying your bill. Yeah, it's the client. You want them to stick with you, right?
And but something we've really seen, especially in the contractor world, has been huge, has been the supplemental space. People are not utilizing that side of it, or you might have too many hands in your company.
Explain supplemental real quick.
So supplemental is, so you have major medical. Major medical pays your doctors and hospitals, right? Your supplemental pays you directly. So you use the money however you need to. House payment, car payment, food on the table, medical bills, whatever it is. It goes directly to you. You use it however you need to, right? Because your medical bills can wait. Your daily living cannot. And that's where we see people get hurt. And if it's not built out correctly, then that's where you have trouble. And something that we run into a lot for a lot of these companies is that you say, okay, we have a broker that does our major medical and our dental and vision, but then they also sent it out, like basically brokered out our long-term and our short-term and our life insurance to somebody else. And now we have somebody else also with our supplemental piece, right? Offering it to our company. Well, now you create confusion. Now especially because now you have 3 people doing 3 separate enrollments for the same company, for the same employees. How does it fit together? Now you create overselling. Now you create overlapping in products. Now you create, I would say, an unstable environment where we can really come in and we can streamline that whole process because we do all of it. Like the biggest thing behind it is just education. And if you're not educating everyone, including the owner, including the HR, including the employees, and you hope the HR is there, but that's not always the HR's job, right? A lot of HR that we run into doesn't know benefits, but they understand people, right? So how do we be a liaison between carriers, employees, and HR?
Yeah, and I've seen it. So mentioning supplemental, like we've witnessed, Will and I have witnessed employees that, whether it's a small thing at home or a little injury or whatever it may be, and like that payout to themselves was super helpful. And if we hadn't offered that, and it was just medical, it would, and some of our employees may be living paycheck to paycheck. So that's a huge benefit to them.
Well, hold on, pause, Dillon. So to our 3 listeners, if you're wondering, Dillon is also speaking specifically about the time where he fell off a ladder at his home working on his guttering.
I was painting the house.
And he broke his arm. And
I'm not referring to that, but, it would have been good if I had supplemental at that point.
he was glad to have some benefits then, wasn't he? Anyway, go ahead. Sorry, you had a question.
I was also going to mention, I'm glad you brought up that, it is sort of a different world and a different language to employees or, even to your leaders of an organization. Because, again, Will and I have experienced this where you have someone come in to talk about benefits enrollment, hey, we're going to, see if you want to sign up for a major medical, dental, vision, and so forth. And everyone's eyes glaze over and they're just like completely confused.
Oh, and there's so many acronyms.
Acronyms left and right.
It's like, whoa, what's PPO, HSA, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I know what a lot of those are, but in my younger days, I didn't. So, I mean, it's a confusing topic, especially for one that's so tied heavily to the quality of life for employees. So,
But that's a piece of it on the education side of the same conversations that I'm going to have with the business owner are not the same conversations I'm going to have with their employees. You can't, because most of the time it doesn't translate because they're in two different areas of life. I can't use insurance slang to talk to an employee because they have no idea what I'm talking about. And then they're like just saying things to me, and this is so confusing. And then they're walking out of there like, well, I don't know, I didn't get anything. And then they're mad later on when they fall off a ladder and they break their arm.
well, that's what I love about Radiant Benefits is, and Hunter, take this as a compliment. Hunter's really good at getting the crayons out. Even for me, I'm like, all right, whoa, time out. I don't know what the hell that means, Hunter. But that's the same for the employee side too. So, in full disclosure, actually, let me just throw this out there. Disclaimer real quick. Do the speed talk like in the car commercials. Like, I'm not a licensed CPA. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm none of that. But I can clearly tell you this. To any contractors out there, like health insurance benefits, it does get better with time. I cover 50% of our employees' health insurance benefits. It's currently like $100 a month per employee. Part of that was also through the education, because we spent a year being like, hey, if you have a fever and it's not an emergency, don't go to the emergency room. Go to urgent care. And we spent a year doing that, and then our costs went down, so then the rates went down, and then the employee got to see those benefits. We have health, dental, we have a life insurance plan, which I want to talk about. Term life insurance for employees. I don't know. You remember? We got a laundry list. Pay time off.
Yeah, supplemental is offered.
Employee, what's it called? EAP?
An EAP, an employee assistance program.
Huge benefit. And I want to talk about that. And then we also have an IRA retirement match program. So it's like we have all of these. But the issue is like, I took time building up into that, and then I realized through all of those that the cost that I thought it was going to be, it was actually about half of what I had in my head. And guess who I was preventing from experiencing the benefit of having all that was the employees. And I felt like such a doofus for not jumping on sooner. So let's talk about that. And sorry, because we talked about health, and hopefully we got over the hump for some contractors. Second one is term life insurance is a game changer. And I would say, specifically when I did a simple $25,000 term life insurance policy for all my employees immediate after 90 days, I had Gen X's and boomers come to me with tears in their eyes, because I know our financial folks have told us, you've heard this from Lance, like the statistics show you're only going to have, most of our population is only going to have $50,000 for set aside for retirement. That's it. So to have like term life insurance, it's like people forget, number one, how affordable it is. But secondly, just what a huge benefit it is to employees. Sorry, you're the expert on this. So let's talk about, because then we're going to get into more leadership and like wealth generating products. But I want to talk more about just the term life insurance product and what is it? How can it be used by entrepreneurs and owners? And then we'll take it from there.
Okay, so term, I do want to ask you this. So as far as term, you mean like a group life insurance that you offer to the benefits? Okay. So on that side, it's definitely a game changer, and we always recommend, if it's in the budget, that our clients offer it. And if it's employer paid, then man, it is eaten up, because it's a huge attractant, right? But even to your point on that, in my opinion, I mean, we have a lot of different outlets through our company. We have the side that is, I'm not gonna say it's whole life, because it doesn't build cash value, but it's term as long as they're there. But then we have a new product now that even whenever they retire, they can take.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say, like, don't hold me to this, listener, but like, I mean, you would know when we instituted that, it was like $4 or $5 per employee. I mean, but we forget, like, people, oh, no, that's not something they care about. No, they care about it. And just the fact that it's, like, in this case, this is 100% employer paid. It is 10% now. So even though it's employee paid, like, I had an underestimation of the value that it brought to other, which was huge. So
I think to that end, as you would onboard employees, and you can say, like, we care about you and your loved ones. That's why we have a life insurance policy for you, because we don't want anything to happen. You know, we don't want you to use this life insurance policy, but like in the unfortunate circumstance that you would, we want your loved ones to be taken care of.
well, and on that note, from a recruiting, sorry, Hunter, it's like, who's our guest, Hunter, or anyway? Sorry, Hunter.
I think it works on both sides.
Yeah, on recruiting though, it is when they're comparing you versus a competitor. Sometimes that's the game changer. They're like, no, I'm going to go with this company because not only do I have these benefits, but also I got a life insurance policy. I don't have a life insurance policy, because they're doing the same thing we employers do of assuming it's going to be astronomically expensive, so we just don't buy it, right? So
Thinking of that, whenever we have a company recently, and we've been running into that 25,000 mark, right? And it's interesting to see how the market's changing. When I was talking about this wholesalers earlier, right? And we've been able to bring these in, so now we can even like double up to 50, but for like half the price. Like, you're talking 50,000 per person, but for $3.50. I'm like, that's insane. And like you say, like, as you scale, the lower that goes. So now it's okay, how do we really utilize this?
yeah, and you can get a little bit more strategic, play a little chess, not checkers, rather than just being like, I just need something, which I think a lot of contractors fall in that. Like, I just got to have something, so that, like, your client you talked before the show, like, they just bought that product because they thought that was the only product there and didn't realize, no, there's a lot of products. Let's tweak it. So now let's shift gears a little bit, because I love this for companies. We can say this online. Like, you've helped one of our good friends at Jolly Go Garage Doors, Jeff Gablesberg. Boy, they're a rocket ship taking off in the garage door world. But, we also have some functions of these insurance products that can be strategic, specifically for, like, your early stakeholders, like the people that are really going to grind it out with you for 5 to 10 years. And I have created these products. A lot of times, you probably know of a few different names. I call them golden handcuffs. I don't know. Am I a relic by still saying that, Hunter?
No.
Okay, cool. So so correct me if I'm, well, actually, Hunter, define golden handcuffs for our 3 listeners.
I would say golden handcuffs is something that keeps an employee or a partner there no matter what. Like, with you. I think that's really the gist of it.
Yeah. With massive financial benefit to that other person. So it's weird to call it golden handcuffs. Handcuffs could mean a lot of different things, Dylan. Look that up on the internet, and I'll let that in your browsing history. But the fact is golden handcuffs are really a financial tool to say, hey, if you stick with me for X amount of time, you are going to generate wealth working with me. Is that safe to say? And it's essentially a UAL product. So now let's break it. Am I right? Is it universal life?
There's different kinds of, there's permanent is the word I like to use, because it may not be that. It might be different types of life insurance, and there's so many different kinds. It's how you build it. I think the biggest mistake sometimes is you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes people are feeding the wrong hands, which may not be theirs, right? Which, from a client perspective, is like, if our clients are growing, then we're also growing, and that is our ultimate goal at the end of. Why is that not your goal? We are looking for the future, not the now. And with that being said, you are correct. And I will also say, disclaimer, right? I'm not a CPA, an attorney, or a expert in this, let's just say.
And you're not a contractor. We got that. That's okay. Hi, John, Hunter. We like you.
But no, like, there's huge tax implications to this as well. So many, many ways to build wealth for those individuals. So you might say, okay, early stages, it might look different. You might say, okay, hey, let's build in, and keep in mind, we use life insurance as a tool. And the most perfect way that I can put it, and it was actually put this way to me, is whenever you go buy your first house and there's nothing on the walls, you want to put a picture up. Okay, well, I need a nail and a hammer. So I go buy a nail and a hammer. I put it up. It's not like I'm going to go throw the hammer away, right? Because the hammer has so many uses to it. The same way we look at life insurance. How do we use it? What is this tool for? Are we going to use it for the golden handcuffs? Are we going to use it to add in less market exposure to the retirement? Are we going to make sure that we can leverage against it, right? Most people don't understand that you can build cash inside of life insurance. And that really blows my mind. And I'm like, man, like I like this, or in my world, I thought that was common knowledge, right? But that's my world. So that's part of the education portion of, okay, how do we leverage your money now, put it into a vehicle, grow it tax-free, tax-deferred, zero capital gains, right? Certain circumstances, it's creditor protected, bankruptcy, lawsuit, can't be touched. Well, that's fantastic, because now we have a lot of security, and those partners that are with you in those early days, now they feel safe. Now there's a reason for them to stay because it's set up properly, right? And that's whenever we really get into the weeds of it, of, okay, how much do we want to max this out? How much do we start? Do we start a small portion? And we might say, okay, and I'm just throwing out random numbers, right? We might say, okay, well, let's build it up to, let's say 50,000 a year, right? Is what you can put into it max. And we might fund it at 10,000 a year because we know in 10 years we're going to sell. Well, we have now $400,000 extra to play with. Well, now we can do a large dump in, sell, and now we can benefit a lot more people and keep the growth growing, right? But you can't just do that right off the bat, and that's when people get hurt, right? Financially get hurt. Because I've known people that say, well, I just put in, several $100,000 over here in one lump sum. And I'm like, what do you do? Why? Like, if it's not structured correctly, it doesn't make sense.
Because they think it's speeding up the process, but it's not.
It is, because the cost is the biggest piece is knowing that life insurance can only hold so much cash. And when you dump in large amounts of cash and it's not done properly, then it's just going to cost you that much more. And you may not see a return on any of that money until a lot longer return. It might be 10, 15, 20 years down the road instead.
Well, and so I want to rewind just a little bit, and I want to define, which I think would be a good representation of what it is. But also, this is so important, especially for family-owned businesses where, the family owns the entire company. It may be a bunch of siblings, it may be, father, sons, all that. And it's a super great tool. But anyway, so get your crayons out, Hunter. Dillon, keep me honest. So I have somebody that I really want to help, or want them to help me grow my company. They're really talented. I may have not been able to afford them because they're so talented. This is where these products come in, to where I can bind it with a contract with my attorney. By the way, our attorney has done this for us, where it says, okay, I'm going to set up a life insurance policy that is value add. It's gaining value. So as we grow, I'm going to continue putting into this. And then when it matures in, say, 10 years, you can take the value of it and do whatever you want with it. You can either transfer it into another account, or you can take all the money out. Now, up until that point, it's also building in the balance sheets. So it's actually an asset in your balance sheets. Am I right there, Hunter?
It can be an asset if you want it to be, but it's also the fantastic side of it is that you don't have to disclose it. You never have to disclose how much money is actually in there. So for my own clients, I'm like, look, like unless you need to leverage it, there's no point. And we have multiple ways to leverage it, which you've seen. And it might be we build it to this point and then we take some out. So keep in mind. So let's say, for instance, you have $100,000 that it built up to. So it builds up to $100,000 and you say, I really want to leverage this and maybe my company, because at the end of the day, the company owns it, right? Not your partner or your person that you really need building it. Because if they leave, you still have access to it, to all of it, which is the beautiful piece of it, right? So you say, okay, well, I'm going to leverage this. I'm going to pull $100,000 out and use it for another investment for my company to go grow another couple hundred, right? And I'll replace it if they want, right? But it still compounds as if the 100,000 never left, which is the best part.
So this would be my next question to you, Hunter. So we've got a lot of clients. They're on that hockey stick trajectory, and they're starting to bring people in, and they need some stakeholders. Isaac from Tampa, if you're listening, thinking of you, brother. So you know Isaac Bell, great guy. Bay Remodeling, Tampa. Anybody from Tampa listening, go get Isaac to help you out. What, as an owner like myself or a construction company, would you recommend, like, before you just go cutting a bunch of checks for all these policies? What are some major check marks that need to be, or bullet points that need to be marked off the list to say, hey, don't go buying a bunch of policies for these people? Like, what advice would you give there?
Oh, man. I would say advice-wise would be find the right advisors. One, like it's the same as like hire slow, fire fast. Hire your advisors really slow and continue. Like it's the same as I had an individual come. He said, hey, I have $600,000. I don't know what to do with it. And it was all like he had it, but he was just testing me to see what I would say, right? I said, all right, well, let's take a small portion of it. Let's put it in here. And what do you want to do with it? And go invest it over there. I don't know. I'm just here to protect you on this side. You already know how to make money. But the point is the rest of his advisors that he went to said, well, give me the whole 600,000 and we can put it into here and we can do this. And that's not really the right move. So that's why it's like the interview process of those advisors, even from your attorneys, because most of the time the attorneys that you're also working with also work directly with individuals like myself or in the same industry, right? And like I said earlier in the podcast, that some are good, some aren't, right? And you have a couple of those bad apples that makes it worse for everyone. Sometimes I think it's hiring slow is the best advice I could give to making sure that you're with the right fit. That because not everyone is the right fit for you, and not everyone's transparent.
Well, this is a great dovetail to Keyman Insurance, which, if you don't know what that is, typically, especially family-owned businesses, we have it for our company where, heck, if I go out and get hit by a bus someday, that's a big problem for the organization. And that is a problem that can be overcome with money to replace the operation function of it. So most people also in the contracting world, number one, don't know what it is or don't understand what the costs are. So let's just take a real quick abbreviated dive into Keyman, because it is, man, it's so important, especially when you're scaling. So
it is. So Keyman is one of the most important.
Yeah. Oh, wait, it's 2024. Keyman, Keywoman insurance.
Key person
insurance. Yeah. You should trademark that for Radiant Benefits, and now you own that brand name.
So key person insurance is definitely like the a vital aspect to your business. Because one, if you have, let's say, a CFO, or you have a COO, you have managers, right? Sales operation. Maybe you have your top salesperson. May not need to be in management. It might just be your top salesperson, right? It might be a manager that makes sure that everything's flowing correctly. It might be your CFO that's taking you from day 1 to day 1,000 and is 10 times your return or 100 times your return, right? And you might have a COO. You might have different individuals in your organization. If something were to happen to now, your organization is hurting, right? Financially, for sure. But how much does it take, or how much does it cost you as a company to replace them? And how many people do you have to hire to replace them. And now how much is your hiring fee? I know this, like before, I think it was like 2018. 2018, the statistic, I believe, don't quote me on this, was $43,000 on average to hire someone. And that's their first 3 months.
Mhm.
And they're not going to see a return your first 3 months, right? So you say, okay, well, I have a high earner in my company that is also bringing me large amounts of income, but I have $1 million policy on them. Well, like maybe we cut it down to 500. Well, now that 500 or even that million might go really fast because now we have to hire 5 people to replace them.
Yep.
Now we have to train them. Now we have to make sure they're fully equipped. Now we have to take other people off of their job to make sure that they're also assisting them correctly, right? Which also costs money. So now it's not just like one position. It is all positions that are affected. And that's the biggest piece of your key person insurance.
By the way, am I way behind the times by calling it Keyman?
No, it's literally called Keyman.
That's the industry standard.
Is it really? Oh, man.
I was just saying key person to mess with you.
Oh, okay. Well, I've got a good friend of mine out east, CP Davis. Hope you're listening, buddy. He made a funny joke about the franchise group. It used to be called Dwyer. They're called Neighborly. And he's like, when are they going to like change some of the branding? It's all Mr. Appliance, Mr. Roto-Rooter, Mr. this. Add a Mrs. in there. Hey, and I was like, you know what? That's actually a pretty good message for their marketing department. Not that any of them are listening probably, but Dylan. So I'm going to let you ask this question. Obviously, we do a little pre-show, call it pre-show prep, where I send some questions, and we always get our host or / guest at least an opportunity to think about the question that's going to be asked. And the second I read it, I was like, oh, this is going to be good. So I'm just going to let you take this one.
I've never been scared by an answer that you've gotten, but I'm a little nervous for what's about to come. So the question is based off this idea that, Will, you mess up a lot of things. We love you for it, but and so we have this idea that you got to learn from your mistakes, and if you make a mistake, you make it big enough that you can brag about it like a Texan, right? And so what is a mistake, Hunter, that you've made that you could brag about now, and maybe you could keep someone, our listener, away from that same mistake in their life?
So that mistake is an ass tat. And
I love the caption that's going to take effect after. Wait, I didn't quite hear you, Hunter. What was it?
Yeah. All right, so ass tat started when. So I think I told you guys. So before, my brother and I, we traveled a lot, right? So it kind of originated in Key West, which I feel like is a fair place to originate in. So we're there for about a week and out partying in, I don't know, it's probably 4 a.m. And keep in mind, the island does not sleep. Everything is open 24/7, doesn't matter what time, except for the tattoo parlors. Luckily on this trip. So we come up with the idea. He goes, hey, if you get a tattoo, then I'll pay for it, but it's something that I pick. And I said, well, like within reason, right? So he came up with this idea, and I said, all right, sounds good. So we walk around the island. Keep in mind, island's not very big. So we walk around this island for about an hour, and every single tattoo parlor, good, they're all closed. So we're like, all right, let's just go to the hotel. We got like 3 hours, so we got to wake back. And so we go back. So the next year, we're back in Florida. This time we're in Destin at the boardwalk. We're hanging out. They have live music. It's good time. We go to the bar afterwards. Family leaves, right? It's just him and I, which never a good combination. And we're talking to this couple, and I'm telling them, like, yes. And so I'm telling him a story about Key West. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, so my brother told me over here that you would get it, and he ended up coming up with a swordfish. So I'm telling this couple this, and they're like, man, like, you guys should get matching ones. And I was like, whoa, like, never thought of that. Like, really, like, just rang a bell in my head. Look at him, and he's like, you want to do it? I'm like, yeah, of course.
I'm picturing like Bill and Ted where Keanu Reeves is like, whoa, like we should both get one.
Literally that. Literally. So we have this bright idea. I instantly order an Uber. We're about 15 minutes from this tattoo parlor. So I'm like, hey, stay here and we're going to come back. We're going to show you. So, so we head over there. Don't ask me what time it was because I have no idea. But we show up. We're like, look, we want a tattoo and we want a matching tattoo. They're like, all right. So they give us all these catalogs to look at. And it's a decently nice tattoo parlor. Yeah, it's very clean, like it's nice. Probably paid way too much for this tattoo. And definitely not worth it. But or maybe it was. So we go to these catalogs. I'm like, I'm not really finding where we're at. So I'm like, look, just Google something. So we pull up the computer, put in swordfish tattoo. We find it in about 15 seconds. That's the one. Sounds good. So they stencil it in. So we're talking, and the question I get asked a lot, anyone knows that I have one, is like, well, does it face your crack, right? So my brother's response to this is, he's like, listen, like, I don't think this is a wise idea. And this is where wisdom really comes in. He's like, because if we ever go to jail or if we ever go to prison, like, I do not want that thing pointing there, right? So
What great foresight. Like, wow, like you can be a prophet,
So we getting matching swordfish tattoos that actually face each other. Whenever we stand side by side, so mine is on the left side, his is on the right side, right? And but the moral of the story, I would say, it was a mistake in the beginning, but I would say it is by far like the best thing that we have together, best brotherhood that we can share, and it is fantastic. And from that mistake, there's been so many great memories out of it.
A picture, isn't there like some old love song about standing cheek to cheek?
Well, maybe we need to play that.
Did you show the people at the bar? Did you go back?
Well, we went back, but it was closed at that time. So we went back to our hotel and we showed the people that were working. And keep in mind, like, you get a tattoo, it's like they wrap it up, right? And just blood everywhere. So we pull their pants down, there's blood everywhere. And I'm like, oh, wait, hang on. Like, let me remove that. Oh, I'm so sorry. And they're like, oh. And then I'm like, hey, like, doesn't this look awesome? They're like, oh yeah, like that's fantastic. And the biggest advice they told us was not to go in the water. Well, of course, the next day we went in the water anyways.
Oh, that's funny.
I bet your wife is so proud of it.
She hates it so much. But
That's fair, but the brotherhood lasts, right?
it does.
I think at some point in the future, we just have one episode that's an abbreviation of all the mistakes recapped, and that's going to definitely make like top 2, and possibly top 1. But no, thank you for sharing that. I think the lesson is nothing good happens after midnight, and don't let two brothers wander around parts of Key West and Destin, Florida together, especially on dares. So I know my brother and I would do the same damn thing if we were left unsupervised. But Hunter, I appreciate you coming on. Obviously, this is a complex world, and I appreciate you kind of like breaking down some of the basics that hopefully it helped somebody to say, like, listen, this isn't as complicated as we're making it out. It's also not as costly. So, but how do people get a hold of you? I know you're involved in LinkedIn, Instagram, I think, but how do people get a hold of you for questions?
I'd say email me at Hunter_Nixon at radiantbenefits.com.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I can give my cell out.
Yeah, if you'd like. I mean, if you're comfortable with it.
I'm not against it. My cell phone is 281-788-7896. If anyone wants to give me a ring.
Cool. Well, I got to tell you, it's we Dillon and I talk about this often about this new workforce that's coming in. We've got to be on our point, on our game to make sure that we're capturing as many people. Otherwise, we're going to be turning around in 5, 6, 7 years, and it's like you're not going to be able to scale because you can't get people. And while we talk about culture and things like that, there is a kind of needed factor of wages and benefits. It's like you can have the best culture in the world, but if you're paying $7 an hour and you have no benefits, well, you're not going to be able to hang around very long. So this is a key factor in trying to grow and scale the business. And a lot of, I know business owners specifically in the construction world, this is a stress point. And all joking aside that we just came from, it's something that brings a lot of sleepless nights and frustration too. So I'm glad that you can answer some questions. And hopefully anybody out there listening can reach out to Hunter to answer those questions. But otherwise, buddy, appreciate you coming on, having a few laughs. We had some technical difficulties today, but we're good. And Dylan, hopefully next time we're in here, we get to see a farmer's tan, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. A farmer's tan and no swordfishes.
Yeah, that's good. Well, hey, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you guys next week and appreciate you listening to Beers with Contractors.
Take care, guys.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Beers with Contractors. We hope you enjoyed our chat as much as we did. Before we say our final goodbyes, a friendly reminder. Beers with Contractors encourages responsible drinking. If you choose to enjoy a beverage during our time together, please do so in moderation and only if you're of legal drinking age in your country or state. Furthermore, the advice and insights shared in this podcast are for informational purposes only. Always consult with professionals and experts in your field, and be sure to follow local laws and regulations regarding licensing and permits. We're here to help, entertain, and inspire, but your safety and compliance are important. So, as you head out into the world of construction and contracting, remember to build responsibly and make decisions that stand the test of time. Thanks for joining us today. We'll catch you on the next episode of Beers with Contractors. Until then, cheers to your success.